Hello and welcome to Walk the Talk Show with Waylon Lewis. I'm honored to be here with my friend Robyn O'Brien. So allergies, cancer, obesity, all these things have gone through the roof in the last, say, 20 years. What can we do about it in terms of what we eat?
You know, I think what we're seeing is a big food awakening where people are suddenly having to read labels. And I mean, I didn't want to. Nobody really wants to be standing in the grocery store reading labels. But, you know, suddenly if you're diagnosed with food allergies, you're diagnosed with diabetes, or, you know, I met with cancer researchers down at MD Anderson, and they call it the doorknob syndrome. And they said they'll have somebody in their office who's just been diagnosed with cancer, and they're going through all the procedures and everything they're going to have to do, and the person, as they're turning to leave, has their hand on the doorknob, will turn back into the office and say, is there something I can be doing with my diet? What can I change? And the doctors are saying we need to upstream that. You know, we don't need that doorknob syndrome.
Upstream it mean like catch it, nip it in the bud.
Yeah, let's teach people this before they are in my office with cancer. And so, you know,
so reading labels is a good first step.
You know what I mean? Diet is a lot like religion. It's not one size fits all. So, you know, we can't say there's a silver bullet and this is going to be something that works for everybody. What we do know is that if you eat real food, that's better than eating fake food. So, you know, dial way back on the processed food, because that stuff is just jam-packed with
processed food being like white flour or something? What is that?
Processed food is a lot of the middle of the grocery store aisles, you know, where you're finding packages of who knows what. I mean, it can be anything.
So more like produce, more food in its natural state.
Right, more fresh food, which is easier said than done because it does tend to be more expensive. But you can make some pretty smart choices, you know, and we've got 4 kids. And as we were starting to make these changes, you know, there are simple things you can swap out. You know, meat tends to be a bigger, higher priced item. So if you dial back a little bit on meat, it affords you more money for fruits and veggies. You know, what we're seeing, everybody's trying to grow gardens. We see them in schools. We see them in community centers. Start one, you know, start a pot of potatoes on your porch. I mean, there's so much that you can do. And give yourself permission to start where you stand and start small, you know. And I think that is something that was hard for me to embrace, because you sort of can make the perfect the enemy of the good, but you can do one thing. You can start with these one little things. So, yeah, definitely eat less of the fake food. Dial way back on those artificial colors. They've been linked to hyperactivity. You know, our American companies like Kraft, Coca-Cola, Walmart, they don't use artificial dyes in the products they sell overseas because of link to hyperactivity. So anybody out there with kids, cut the artificial colors, because they've been cut from kids' products overseas because of the link to hyperactivity.
Wow. So that stuff like in M&Ms or those cereals or Coke or
Gatorades, it's in everything, you know. So thankfully now, you know, there are a lot of alternatives that are coming on the market, and a lot of these entrepreneurs have kids that have some of these conditions, you know. And even inside these big companies, there was a guy who was inside Nestle. He's resigned, he retired, he's not there anymore. He had 3 boys, and he cared so much, you know. And I think don't underestimate that power, because, you know, that is probably one of the greatest motivators that there is, you know, to protect the health of the people that you love. And so, you know, write letters to these companies. They are listening. They know that social media has absolutely changed the game.
So tweet them or write a letter.
Yeah, and write a letter and say, you know, if they've made a change, that you appreciate the change. If they haven't made a change, say, hey, guess what? You guys changed this overseas. We want you to change it for us here. And then the other thing is, you know, what I found surprising was that, you know, members of Congress are surprisingly open about this stuff, again, because they have families too. I met with a senator, and he shared that he had grandchildren with peanut allergy and diabetes and ADHD. And I think, you know, again, unfortunately, there's not a family in the country that hasn't been impacted by one of these conditions. So people are surprisingly open, and everybody needs the political cover. The CEOs, the CEOs of the food companies need political cover. Our, you know, legislators, they need political cover. And then the last thing I would probably say is that, you know, this information, when you learn it, is a gift. You know, countries around the world already know it. We didn't have this conversation as Americans. You know, 60% of the world, they label GMOs. Artificial dyes aren't used in kids' foods overseas because of linked hyperactivity. And if you treat this information and share it like it's a gift that you're excited to give somebody, it's way easier for someone to receive it. Because food is super sensitive, and it can be so loaded, and it can sound so preachy sometimes.
So don't be aggressive.
Just offer it like a gift.
And in you mentioned labeling of GMOs, like the more we can push for labeling, just transparency.
You know, the thing about labeling is a patchwork of state labels it would be terrible. If I were the CEO of a food company, I would think that is a nightmare. I don't want to manage this patchwork. What these state labeling initiatives do they create a ton of noise. They create a ton of press. And suddenly this conversation we didn't have where people might say, I don't know what a GMO is, suddenly it's in that paper. So it creates an opportunity to educate and also inform these companies that this movement is legit, it's happening, it's not some fringy thing anymore, that this is really happening. And so, what's probably more likely is that the market will shift faster. You're seeing it with companies like Kroger and Chipotle. They're shifting fast. They're dumping these artificial ingredients and GMOs, and they're seeing huge upside and capturing enormous return. The share prices are soaring. And I think, that opportunity is what can be captured. And if these companies can see this more as an opportunity than a threat, it changes the game. And then I think once that shift happens in capital, policy will follow the money. So, I say let's shift the market first, and policy will follow the money.
So we're at 5 minutes, but one final question. Why is being wary of GMOs or aware of them not anti-science?
I think for me personally, I'm calling for more science. I think science is absolutely critical in this, and that the only way to know for sure if a product does exactly what it says is to label it. And so for these companies, if they stand behind that science, label it, so that we can continue to monitor its effect on the population, on the health of our farms, how it might be impacting our farmers, and continue to monitor the science.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Robyn.
Thanks,
a pleasure.
Waylon.
Yeah, keep it up. Robyn O'Brien. SoundCloud, youtube.com/Waylon H. Lewis.